and he got a job working for Disney as an Imagineer. So they needed somebody to replace him. And because I had this experience not only with radio control, but I had also built my own R2, they asked me to come in and talk to them. I did. They asked me to drive R2 around, and I didn't bump into anything, and they hired me. So that was in 1987. So I started working with R2 in 1987.
G'day guys, we're back and with one of my favourite episodes that I recorded last year, and I'm pleased to let you know that we'll have fresh content coming out again soon. Don Bies worked on almost every movie that I've loved and worked in special effects, which also I love. Star Wars, Ghostbusters, a whole raft of others, as you will hear as you go through. So there will be 5 episodes. This is part 1, so keep your eyes out. Each day we'll be releasing an extra piece. If you want to watch the whole thing in entirety, that's also available on the channel. And if you would prefer to listen to it, then that will be coming out on podcast soon. So if you're not already subscribed, click like, subscribe, and be the notification bell, so that way you will hear about these things, particularly because we haven't been active for a while, as we have been busy doing crowdfunding and other things like that you'll learn about as we go on the way. But anyway, now get into the show. Enjoy hearing Don's story.
Hey, Brad.
G'day, mate.
How you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good. I got my Bundaberg lemon, lime, and bitters in honor of my Australian friends.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So I'm interested to dig into the story of how you met your wife. I don't know. Was that related to the Pirates of the Caribbean work?
No, I was acting as the Lucasfilm archivist at the time, working on a huge exhibition of models and stuff that was going to go to Japan, and I got a call from the head of Star Walking, which is based in Melbourne, and they were looking for someone to replace Howard Kazanjian, who was their original guest, and who backed out at the last minute. So I was recommended, and I figured, hey, I'd go to Australia for a weekend.
Yeah.
And my wife was handling PR for that. And, well, she wasn't my wife at that point. We met at that point. So.
Yeah. Very good. So now, Don, did I butcher your last name? Probably, because I had 2 goes, so one's got to be wrong.
Bees.
Bees, right. Yeah. And what's the heritage of that? What's your lineage?
It's Polish, actually. I just found out a few years ago it's Demon. So, hey.
There you go. Now, look, for people who don't know who you are, perhaps we could start with you giving, I guess, a little bit of an intro on to, who you are and I guess what you have mostly done in your career and then what you're doing now.
I actually started in 1985 for the movie The Fly, the Jeff Goldblum, David Cronenberg film. I was on the makeup effects crew for that. And I did mainly mechanical design. I helped make the big thing that he turned into at the end, and several smaller puppets that got cut along the way.
Right.
But that was 1985. That was my first film. I grew up in Chicago, and I did some theater there. And I just always knew I wanted to be in film. So I found out about the job that was happening at Chris Wayless Incorporated, which is who did Gremlins and Enemy Mine prior to The Fly.
Yeah.
And so I sent in a portfolio, and Chris hired me over the phone, and I drove out to California and been out here ever since.
So exciting. So tell me how that started. I'm always really interested to find out, and particularly in this field, and I think, particularly anybody who is an admirer of a lot of the films that you have been in will probably have, a similar interest in how does somebody get in the door, and has it radically changed from when you started to how it is today?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, first of all, the kind of work that I did doesn't really. There's not a lot of places to do it. There's a few places in Los Angeles that still do it, and I know there's actually a couple makeup effects houses in Sydney, actually, and Melbourne. But here, it's mainly out Los Angeles, and so I'm in the north in California, north of San Francisco, and there were a number of effects houses. There's, of course, Industrial Light and Magic, which is what I worked at a lot, and Chris Wayless Incorporated, which doesn't exist anymore either. And Chris was a spinoff from ILM because he did Raiders of the Lost Ark and Dragon Slayer at ILM. So at the time, it was, if you had a portfolio of work, you just did it as a hobby at home, which is what I did. You just submitted it, and when they were hiring in a big project, you're lucky enough to get in, you got in. Now everything's more digital, so you have to have a reel, and it's a little different. We when all the effects places that I worked at was a group of people that were like-minded and wanting to do that kind of work. Now I think you're a smaller cog in a much bigger machine. We were kind of all generalists at the time, where we could do a bunch of different things. But now we see the way CG is constructed. Some people are modelers, some people are painters, some people are compositors, that sort of thing. So you have to kind of tailor for what you want to be in.
Yeah. And as far as the portfolio goes, what does that look like? Because I'm wondering what somebody may have done, before they came into it. So would it be that they perhaps worked in some other field of doing makeup, or that they, let's say it was practical effects, that they've got a background of making models and creating things, or modifying scratch building, or kit bashing, that sort of thing?
Yeah, portfolios I'd seen at the time. Well, certainly my portfolio, I thought I was going to do makeup effects. I was, in love with makeup monsters and movies, and, Frankenstein and Planet of the Apes and King Kong and that sort of stuff. So I was really into that. So I was into sculpting, and I was into like I said, I thought I was going to be a makeup artist. So my portfolio had a bunch of makeup in it, but it also had some mechanical stuff. I built my own R2-D2 when I was in high school. Star Wars came out, so I had that in there, and I had a couple of other mechanical things that I had built. I was also set designing for theater and prop making and that sort of stuff. So all that was included in a portfolio, just to show that I could do anything. Hire me for anything. It was kind of what the thing was. And so when Chris looked at it, he kind of looked past my makeup stuff, because that was taken care of. And to be honest with you, I wasn't that good at the makeup aspect. And he was asking me more about my mechanical skills, because that's where they were really lacking. They were really looking for somebody that could do, building mechanisms for puppets and that sort of things.
Yeah. So the R2-D2 that you built, was it a life-size R2-D2?
Yeah, it was full size. It was radio controlled, made noises and all that sort of stuff. It was, a little crudely built at the time, but I based it all around the dome. The only thing I could find for the dome that would work was the top of the garbage bin that had one of those dome shaped with a little door that flapped. And so it was at my high school, and I told a friend I'd give him a ride home if he steals it for me. And he did.
The bin?
he just the top. The top.
Yeah.
And I took that and I made the head of R2 around, and then from that I based the dimensions of the rest of the body. So,
wow, that's awesome. I definitely think that's one way, and that explains. Because I was thinking, you were involved. Looks like you were kind of involved with R2-D2 through 5 movies to the count that I found, and I was wondering what the story was with the first one. So you essentially saw the original Star Wars, loved that, and then created your own R2-D2 from there.
Yeah. I didn't start. You mentioned in the opening that I worked on Empire and Jedi. I worked on the special editions, so I didn't work on the originals.
Okay.
But when I was in California, and I met a guy that was doing the R2 appearances for public appearances, personal appearances,
Right.
and he got a job working for Disney as an Imagineer. So they needed somebody to replace him. And because I had this experience not only with radio control, but I had also built my own R2, they asked me to come in and talk to them. I did. They asked me to drive R2 around, and I didn't bump into anything, and they hired me. So that was in 1987. So I started working with R2 in 1987.
Wow, that's awesome. So by 87, had all of those three original movies been out at that stage? Was Return of the Jedi been out?
Yeah, everything had been out. When I came to California, it was 2 years since Return of the Jedi had started, and ILM wasn't doing anything Star Wars. Certainly, Lucasfilm wasn't. And I think when I came out and I was working on The Fly, they were working on Howard the Duck.
Right.
And then in '87. The same year I started working with R2, right before that, a good friend of mine, John Berg, who did the walkers for Empire Strikes Back, he was a stop motion animator.
Right.
I met him when I worked on The Fly, and he was heading up a crew to do some puppeteering for Witches of Eastwick, which is with Jack Nicholson and Cher and Michelle Pfeiffer. And they were doing this effect shots at ILM, and they needed a whole team of puppeteers. I think it was 30 people they needed. So John asked me to come in on that crew. So I worked on that for about a week, just puppeteering. Puppeteering, it sounds very lofty, but it wasn't. My job was to pull a lever, and it made Jack Nicholson's tongue come out. So that was my job. But I had to pull it at the right time.
Yeah.
So that was my first job at ILM. And I continued doing a couple of films at CWI. I did Fly 2, a very bad horror film called The Kiss that we shot in Canada. I was on a location for that.
Yeah.
And then I got the job at the archives. And I was doing the R2 stuff, and for other personal appearances, I would help with, Darth Vader needed to be somewhere, or Chewbacca, or C-3PO, or anything. And then I'm trying to remember the first film that ILM was, and it's like '89 or something. Oh, Ghostbusters 2. No, sorry, Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah, it's another classic.
And then right after that, I worked on Ghostbusters 2 for a little bit. So
that's awesome.